Hi, welcome to a new episode of History in 7 Facts. In this show, we'll explore interesting and intriguing episodes from humanity's past, from the ancient times all the way to the modern era. This chapter will deal with some of the most mysterious events that occurred in the past, for which we still don't have definitive answers. Today we'll talk about the famous lost colony of Roanoke and try to find out why those first English settlers disappeared. In 1587, a colony was founded on Roanoke Island, Virginia, composed of 123 English men, women, and children. 3 years later, the colonists were gone. They disappeared without a trace. Some historians believe that these people were the victims of a conspiracy at the English court. So what exactly happened? In order to untangle this story, we need to look at the words of John White. John was a sailor, an artist, and the appointed governor of the first permanent English settlement in North America, Roanoke. This future colony was going to be named Raleigh, after the sponsor of the expedition, Sir Walter Raleigh. He invested £50,000 and sent 18 ships to America to find a proper spot to begin the colonization. But Raleigh's attempt at fame, fortune and power was to be ended in disgrace. He was imprisoned and executed. And this might be the key to the story of Roanoke. At first glance, John White's account of the 1587 voyage to the New World and the disappearance of the settlers sounds like a simple tragic story of a failed colony. But in White's account, there is some evidence to suggest that it was all a diabolical plot to hinder Walter Raleigh's grand ambitions. For John White, this tragedy was personal. When he had to sail back to England, he left behind his daughter and his newborn granddaughter, together with the rest of the colonists, on a small island off the coast of what is today North Carolina. It would take 3 years for him to come back. There was a threat of a Spanish invasion of England, so most of the English ships were stuck in port. It took 3 years for Raleigh to convince Queen Elizabeth to approve the departure of a new expedition. So John White set sail in 1590, hoping to find his beloved family okay. But he also knew that the colonists he left behind were very vulnerable. The local Native American population was hostile. In fact, just 1 week before he left for England, one colonist was killed with an arrow from the natives. When he finally reached Roanoke, White found a deserted settlement, with no one in sight. There was only one clue left behind. On a wooden stake, he found the word Croatoan hastily scratched on. Roanoke was supposed to be the first permanent English settlement in North America. But it wasn't meant to be. Historians today believe that those settlers were nothing more but pawns in a political conspiracy of the powerful English nobles. Throughout the 16th century, English traders and noblemen were enticed by the prospect of conquering the New World. The riches of America were too tempting of a prize, and any coastal settlement would become a gold mine if a passage to Asia would be found. Sir Walter Raleigh was one of those people who wanted to participate in this race. He was given 8.5 million acres of land in America by Queen Elizabeth. But he still wasn't sure which land to pick. One of his captains, Arthur Barlow, told Raleigh that Roanoke was a bountiful island where supplies could be gathered without much effort. But of course, this wasn't really the case, and the first attempt of settling Roanoke failed after just 10 months. During this first attempt, conflict arose with the local Secotàn natives, and one of the villagers was murdered. In response, the Secotàn stopped helping the settlers, who then were at the mercy of nature for obtaining food. Raleigh decided to move the colony 80 kilometers to the north in the Chesapeake Bay, far away from the hostile neighbors. A small garrison was left behind to guard the former settlement. It was at this time that John White was tasked to gather 150 people who would start all over in a new settlement. Each colonist would receive 500 acres of land, so the offer was quite tempting. But time was of the essence because the colonists had to reach Chesapeake before the planting season began. So White was able to gather only 115 colonists, who set sail in April 1587. During the trip, White noted the difficulties he immediately encountered. The source of these problems was the captain of the ship, Simon Fernandez. This guy was a former pirate, but had very good navigating skills, and he knew the east coast of America like the back of his hand. But Fernandez seemed to be very deceitful and untrustworthy. He willingly abandoned a supply frigate, and he wouldn't allow the crew to finish loading water and salt in the Caribbean. The expedition was also progressing very slowly. In June, Fernandez even stopped the ship for several days near Carolina to find his bearings. Remember, the captain was known to be an excellent navigator. White considered Fernandez to be grossly incompetent, ignorant and negligent. The consequences were disastrous. The settlers would now miss the planting season and would have to rely solely on their provisions. But the worst part was soon to follow. White was ordered by Raleigh to stop at Roanoke to address the small garrison left behind in 1585 and leave them new supplies. But while John White and 40 others were transported to the island, one of Fernandez's corsairs told them that this was the end of the line for them. The expedition was not to be allowed to return to the ship, and the rest of the colonists would all be transported and left behind on Roanoke. How John White reacted, we'll never know, but he and his fellow settlers were to be abandoned in a hostile territory, with dwindling supplies and past the planting season. They searched for the small garrison of 15 people that were supposed to be on Roanoke, but all they found was their dusty bones. Then the settlers got a break. Their supply frigate reached Roanoke and gave the people a chance for survival. The people then decided to send White back to England to clear things up with the authorities and send help. From Simon Fernandez's logs, we know that he sailed near the American coast for another 36 days, which was more than enough time to transport the colonists to Chesapeake Bay. So why did he abandon them on Roanoke? The answer lies on the other side of the Atlantic, in Queen Elizabeth's royal court. As you might expect, Queen Elizabeth was surrounded by countless noblemen seeking to be in her favor. Sir Walter Raleigh was one of the most prominent. He was very close to the Queen and was her confidant. His influence on Elizabeth was great, and she often dismissed the counsel of other more experienced counselors like Sir Francis Walsingham, who was the Secretary of State. Walter Raleigh was lavishly rewarded for his loyalty and counseling. He received all the domains of one Anthony Babington, who was planning to assassinate the Queen. All this wealth and power attracted the envy of other noblemen, but very few had the power and wit to get rid of him. One of them was Francis Walsingham. The man had big financial problems, but he was the one who uncovered the plot against the Queen. So naturally, he expected to receive Babington's domains. So you see, it isn't that surprising that Walsingham would now seek to ruin Raleigh at all costs. Indeed, historic documents show a clear link between Francis Walsingham and Simon Fernandez. The Portuguese pirate was supposed to be hanged for his crimes, but he didn't. It was Walsingham who managed to save him. We also know that Raleigh tried to send ships to save the colonists, but it was Walsingham who ordered the ships to stay in port. John White set sail again to Roanoke only 1 month after Walsingham's death. John White never found his family and fellow settlers. His attempts at searching for the areas was met by misfortune, pirates, and devastating storms. He died in 1604, never knowing what happened on Roanoke. Raleigh most likely never found out about the scratched message Croatoan, so his rescue parties only searched for the settlers in Roanoke and Chesapeake. They never sailed to the island of Croatoan, just 80 kilometers to the south. Raleigh was now on the verge of losing his American possessions. He was supposed to set up a permanent colony within 7 years, and now the time was up. After Queen Elizabeth's death, Walsingham's old allies managed to persuade the new king, Jacob I, to lock up Raleigh in the Tower of London. He was found guilty of treason, and his domains passed to his rivals. In the end, Walsingham's plan worked. In the year 1608, there was a rumor that the leader of the Powhatan tribe told stories to the colonists of Jamestown, Virginia, about the slaughter of the Roanoke colonists. This rumor is today dismissed by historians and think that it was a ruse to take the lands of the Powhatan. But there might be another clue as to what happened to the lost settlers. Before he had left the colony, John White instructed the colonists that if anything happened to them, they should carve a Maltese cross on a tree nearby, indicating that their absence had been forced. There was no cross, and White took this to mean that they had moved to Croatoan Island, now known as Hatteras Island, but he was unable to conduct a search. But in 1701, the English topographer John Lawson did describe an unusual group of people living on Croatoan. Some of these people were white-skinned and had some understanding of the English language. Whether this meant that these people mixed with the European colonists is something we'll probably never know for sure. But it does seem that at least some of the lost colonists did survive after all. Thank you for watching this episode of 7 Facts. I hope this was interesting and informative, and maybe it even inspired you to look into it further on your own. If you liked this video, please thumbs up and subscribe. While you're downstairs, let me know what you think about this video. Please consider visiting my Patreon page and become a patron. The link is in the description. I hope to see you next time. Bye.